Hello, everybody. Welcome to another Comic Source Comic Boom collaboration. We're up to issue 25 of Spawn for our daily Spawn, our year of the Spawn, our 30th
Yes.
anniversary of Spawn. However you want to look at it, we're celebrating Spawn this year by covering the entire regular series, and yeah, we're up to 25. And it's definitely has a little bit of a different feel than a lot of the previous issues. Um, and a lot of that has to do with the artist. And uh, I mean, I guess I should just give the credits. Maybe that's the best way to do it. So this is drawn by Marc Silvestri. He's the one that does the pencils. It's still written by Todd McFarlane. We have inks by Batt and Billy Tan, letters by Tom Orzechowski as usual, and then Brian Haberlin does the colors. So uh, Batt is probably much more known for, and Billy Tan much more known for inking Marc Silvestri than Todd McFarlane. Um, so it's kind of interesting to see one of the other Image founders giving his take on Spawn. So in terms of the story, I almost feel like McFarlane, how can I put this? It's almost like he pulled back on the story because he just wanted Marc Silvestri's pencils to shine. Um, I don't know. It felt a little different to me. I don't know. What do you think?
Well, we were talking earlier about this habit that McFarlane has. One issue will be, I take notes when I review this, and I got so few notes reviewing this issue. The next issue, 26, I reviewed. I got 2.5 pages of notes. I didn't find a lot happens in this issue. But again, Marc Silvestri. It's interesting that we got his pencils, but I didn't find this issue to be all that eventful. But again, honestly, I'm amazed at how I don't know. Like it's times like this where I question myself. Sometimes I like there's that egotistical side of me. I like to think I've got a little bit of a discerning eye after 40 years of collecting comics that I kind of can tell the difference between two artists. But sometimes, I'm looking here between McFarlane, Greg Capullo, and Marc Silvestri. I guess there is a difference, but honestly, again, to the unscrupulous eye, just picking up this issue of 25, reading it, I felt right at home in the Spawn universe. I don't think your layperson would necessarily be able to tell a difference between a McFarlane, a Capullo, and a Silvestri, to be honest with you. But that probably, admittedly, says more about my discerning eye than anybody else.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely can tell a difference. But the other thing, so I went back and I looked and I tried to find some information on it. I remember these issue 25s coming out like way in advance, right? Like I think it was after about the first, because it's so funny, right? Like we're talking, after the first year, so meaning after the first 12 issues, right? But
Mhm.
in the case of a lot of these titles, 12 issues took a year and a half, if not longer, and it certainly felt longer for all the fans with all the and readers with all the delays. But I think somewhere around issues 12 or 14 of the books that were coming out on a regular basis. So basically, Spawn and Savage Dragon, basically, they decided to Eric Larson and probably I think Cyberforce was another one that was coming out relatively on a regular schedule. So I think those three books. I think um, Spawn 25, Cyberforce 25, and Savage Dragon 25. I think if you go and look at those books, they're drawn by they, they mixed up the creative teams. So for the most part, Spawn um, had been Todd McFarlane. Granted he had a few fill-in writers here or there. Savage Dragon was always Eric Larson pretty much, and then Cyberforce was Marc Silvestri. So I'm looking it up right here. So yeah, if I go and I click on Savage Dragon 25,
Yeah.
well, no, I guess that one's still written and drawn by Eric Larson. So maybe that's not the case. Um, Let me look up Cyberforce real fast. 25 and see if that's the case there, because again, I just remember it being a big deal that, like 2 years ahead of when it actually should have been, they uh, they put out their 25th issue, so to speak. So I don't know. It was kind of weird because then they basically had to write so that this book would line up, right? Like the story would line up. So when you say not much happened, you kind of wonder, well, if McFarlane had to write this 2 years ahead of time, he probably purposefully had to keep it vague, um, because then he didn't want to write himself into a corner,
Yeah.
basically. So that might be what's going on. Of course, I can't even find Cyberforce. How is Cyberforce not? If you do a search for Marc Silvestri, how does Cyberforce not come up? Not sure how
Well,
that.
yeah, it hasn't really been Cyberforce hasn't really been an intellectual property on the pop culture landscape though for a very long time. So
Yeah, here
perhaps
it
the
is.
internet can be forgiven.
Yeah, and the main title didn't even get up to number 25. So I don't know. Maybe I'm misremembering. Maybe it was only Spawn that did this. But
I don't
I
know.
mean,
I don't honestly. I don't remember any of that. But I stopped collecting Spawn at issue like 12 or 13. So it's kind of news. You're always giving me a history lesson, which I appreciate.
yeah, I mean, I guess I should have looked it up ahead of time, but I'm gonna check out one more thing because, I mean, if I'm right and we look at the publication date, then the publication date for this, for 25, should be, you know, quite a bit um, ahead of 24. So, and again, I've got to scroll all the way down to the bottom because now, we're up to whatever issue 300 and something.
But I thought
So
that was for a previous issue. I thought issue 22 came out before. I thought we already been through this. Like, was this a common
no,
occurrence?
no. Well, see, that's the thing. Like, I think the ones that Tom Orzechowski wrote, 19 and 20, those were just late, and they were forced by Diamond to resolicit those.
Hmm.
But I want to say 25 came out. Yeah, but see, that's not what I'm seeing here. Maybe I'm just completely off my rocker. Maybe I'm misremembering. Because if I look at this, it does say 24 is September 1st, 1994, and 25 is October 1st, 1994. So I guess I'm wrong, but I could have sworn that they did that they jumped forward in time like 2 years. Maybe it's with 50. I don't know. Anyway,
I'm
I'm not gonna
sure it
waste.
happened. We'll just pretend we're in the DC universe. Somewhere in the omniverse, it happened that way, and everything matters. So we'll leave it like
Yeah,
that.
maybe I'll take a deeper look, or maybe if we ever get Todd on, we can ask. But
Okay.
anyway, if we dive in, it's called Tremors, and it starts off and bit of a recap. We get the three talking heads: the CNN guy, the E Entertainment guy, and the right wing guy who's now on channel Viacom 6, and they're all referencing the recent events that we saw in the Hunt storyline, um, where all these different agencies were fighting. We're trying to track down Spawn. And again, it doesn't make a whole. You can't put too much stock in it because we even talked about it, right? How the CIA is not allowed to operate in the border of the United States, but yet it was FBI, CIA, and the cops, and you had the mafia and the mafia's, I guess we'll call him enforcer, cybernetic enforcer, Overkill, um, and Spawn, and the homeless guy. So yeah, it was somewhat of a almost like a gang war, and so that's what's sort of recapped or referenced by the three talking heads. Then we get a scene where a bunch of the homeless guys are sitting around the fire, doing what homeless guys do, I guess, talking about the Red Sox and the Yankees and drinking some booze and going to pee in the alley. Um, and then one of the guys, as he goes to relieve himself and then he's coming back, he gets accosted by another street punk. And we're told in the exposition about how Spawn has now set it up so everybody who lives on that turf, the turf that Spawn's protecting, um, is protected from outside, but there are still some threats on the inside, right? So this guy, the insinuation is this guy's an enforcer among the homeless themselves, and he has a message for Spawn. He says, tell Spawn he needs to pull back 15 blocks unless he's looking for a turf war. My boss will take him out. Blah blah blah. Typical turf war kind of stuff, I guess. Then we get a little interlude where we see Terry Fitzgerald is back at his work, and he's feeling a little out of sorts because, again, he knew everybody was chasing him, everybody was after him, and then all of a sudden it just stopped. And the way he puts it is somebody's breathing down heavy on them, so it's going to be hard to get any answers. So he wants to know who was behind it. I mean, he's glad that the pressure's off now and he's not being framed anymore, but he wants to know who was behind it. And he realizes that everybody's still suspicious of him, even if he supposedly is in the clear now. And then Wanda shows up to say hi, and kind of interesting and shows sort of her integrity, because she talks about how, after losing Al and Al having a dangerous job and working in the intelligence community, that she really appreciated Terry being there to help her get through the loss of her husband. But because Terry was in the intelligence agency as well, she was a little gun shy about having a good understanding of what Terry did, right? She talks about the fact that she thought if she put some distance between like knowing what Terry did and kind of their home life, I guess you would say, that it would protect them. It would protect her and their daughter. Obviously, that wasn't the case. So she's like, I might as well know what you do, since not knowing what you do didn't help at all. When things went bad, she was threatened. So,
Well, doesn't it seem a little bit? I mean, she knows that. I mean, he kind of works for the CIA, doesn't he? I mean,
well, he works for the United States Security Group.
right.
So,
So I'm thinking like he can't tell it.
it's
He
even
can't go
above.
home and tell his wife whatever the hell. Well, what did you do
Yeah,
today, honey? Well, I can't
yeah,
tell you. I mean, I
yeah.
don't. I'm not really sure how much. I think as a reader I can appreciate Wanda's frustration with having now a second husband who likes to keep secrets. But I mean, let's face it. He doesn't really have much of a choice. It kind of comes with the job. So I'm not really sure if it's going to change their bonding or their closeness. But I suppose it's a nice gesture on her part. But it might get him laid another time. But I don't think it's necessarily going to change the quality of their communication.
Yeah, I mean, you wonder about that. I mean, she wasn't saying anything, but you're right. I mean, he obviously can't share secrets or anything. But yeah, I mean, maybe they can be closer in some way, or he can at least intimate if things are going well or not.
Uh,
But I will say, this is one of those pages where the Silvestri art really shines,
oh
especially
my
when we get
God, she's
the
beautiful.
silhouette.
She's
Yeah,
gorgeous.
yeah. Well,
Wanda.
we get the silhouette of her, but it's also very '90s, right? Because I think maybe her legs might be a little too long.
No, no such thing. And they go up and make a
I
nice ass out of themselves too. So that's all right.
but I'm just saying in terms of correct anatomy,
Yeah.
and those heels are extra. She's practically walking around in point shoes, like ballet shoes almost. Her heels
Yeah.
are so high. So anyway, I just noticed it in the silhouette for
I,
sure. So
I would suggest she's using her feminine wiles to get Terry to open up and maybe violate some state secrets. Because if I was him, I would I might be a lawyer by occupation, but I might even violate solicitor client privilege to if my wife came in wearing heels that high. But
yeah, I mean maybe she's like, Terry couldn't get me the answers about Al. I'm gonna find him myself
uh,
by getting access. Who knows? Who knows?
yeah.
Anyway, back in the alley, we see the enforcer. We find out his name is David Brewy, and he's a Vietnam vet. And he goes climbing into an abandoned building to meet this boss, whose message he was delivering, that was telling Spawn to kind of pull back his territory. And when we get a glimpse of this guy, he's giant, he's hulking, he's got some ragged teeth, he's got some horns. He sort of looks like a demon himself. And he's got a very gravelly voice. And right away I was like, man, what's going on in these alleyways of New York that all these demons and hellspawns and monsters are creeping around there. But what we find out after the guy delivers his message is that whoever this demonic looking guy is, he's got it in for Vito Gravano. He even calls him a fat pig. I'll be able to bring that fat pig Gravano to his knees. And he calls him a mafia scumbag and crashes around in the building a little bit. And David Brewery has to make a hasty escape. And this guy, who we never do find out his name, he says, nobody's going to keep Gravano safe. Not Overkill, not Spawn, not God. So this guy's after Spawn because he says Spawn's got everything this guy needs. So meanwhile, we see Spawn. He's chilling on his throne, and he's thinking about how he tried to keep his existence a secret. He tried to keep the people that he cared about safe, and it completely backfired. And almost like, not only did he, he made this deal with the devil. Not only did he not get his wife back, he came back 5 years later, tried to keep his existence a secret, and in doing so, almost got his wife killed. So it was almost the exact opposite of what he wanted. Instead of being reunited with her, he almost got her killed, which I guess in a way would have allowed them to be reunited. But we're told he won't allow that to happen again. And despite what we saw a few issues ago with him sort of seeming like he was accepting his existence as Spawn, now it feels like he's kind of moping around and backsliding a little bit. And he thinks that he was a fool, and these guys, his friends in the homeless community that reside in his alleys, shouldn't see him as their savior or what have you. And as he's thinking all these thoughts and feeling sorry for himself, one of the guys actually shows up and says, Al, you got to hear this, right? And he's going to tell him about the guy that showed up and told him he needed to pull back his territory. But again, Al Simmons feeling sorry for himself. He's like, I don't need to hear what you say. It's time you guys learn to solve your own problems. The guy's like pleading with him, like, no, you don't understand. Like Spawn's, no, you people have become lazy. You keep coming to me for answers. I don't have the answers. Solve your own problems. I got a few of my own.
Yeah.
And he goes walking out. So pretty harsh. Like, come on, man. Like, I get it. Your life does kind of suck. Your face looks like ground up hamburger, and you got the wrong end of the deal.
And I should add that Spawn's face still has the shoelaces that were used to stitch up his face. He still hasn't healed his face, and I can't help but think that that's a little bit of sort of bending of the rules, because I would expect Spawn's face to have healed by now, but I think it's such a cool visual that every artist wants to draw that disgusting face, because Silvestri does a magnificent job with it, with that. That looks absolutely horrific, and just, it looks amazing.
Yeah, I mean, the other argument against it having healed is, this isn't technically a human body, so maybe it can't heal on its own, and he's got to expend energy to heal it, and he just doesn't want to bother to waste it. So
yeah.
But
it's not like he has to impress anybody, so
yeah, yes,
he's not going to win any beauty contests. So
exactly. And then we do get another quick interlude. This time we're at a diner. Sam and Twitch are having lunch, and Sam's in an exceptionally good mood, and it has everything to do with the fact that he's got the file on Chief Banks that Spawn gave him, and he says that having that file brings a warm spot to his heart. Meanwhile, back above the alleys this time, we see Spawn, and he's kind of risen above the alleys to give himself some perspective, is kind of the way I read it. And he's thinking about his former life and how he fought and killed for what he believed in. And now he's something different. He feels like he's an instrument of evil. He's something dark and foul and disgusting. And as he stares down at the group of homeless people that supposedly he's there to protect, but now maybe he's second guessing that, he realizes that their friendship and their interactions with him are the moments when he feels closest to being human. And so he decides that he should seize those moments and be their protector, defend his beliefs, and act like a man, sort of fake it till you make it. So he decides to go talk to this other guy who told him that he needs to back off his turf, right? He's going to oppose him and get some answers. So we see that guy, and again, we don't know his name, but he's sitting in a building on a couple of the upper floors and looking out the window when he sees what looks to be Spawn, and he hears a voice saying, "You wanted to talk?" And the guy reaches through the glass and grabs Spawn, and it comes come to find out it's just a decoy. It's just a plywood thing, and he gets all mad and he smashes it up. Plywood, crunch, crunch, show yourself, coward. And so then Spawn kind of shows it. I mean, it's a fun moment. And Spawn says, here I am. You're not going to push the old guys around anymore. And so they have a little bit of a fight. And what we learn is that this other demon isn't actually a demon at all. As much as he looks demonic, and there's some kind of Malbolgia looking resemblance. He looks as horrific as Spawn does. What we find out is he actually was a hitman for Vito Gravano. And after Spawn showed up and Violator showed up, and they heard about these demonic looking guys, they ran their own experiments, and between some chemicals they used and some metal fused to the flesh and microsurgery and some sort of radiation and anti-rejection drugs. Basically, I think they threw everything in the kitchen sink at this guy. It transformed him into this terrible monster. And now this guy this former hitman for Gravano wants revenge. And so when Spawn hears all this, he doesn't necessarily agree to help the guy go after Gravano. But what he does is he leaves and comes back with the file that he has on Gravano that has, all this information. And he tells them, he goes, this contains everything that I have on Vito. I haven't read it all, but there's plenty in there. And the guy's like, okay, where'd you get it? Spawn mentions that he took it from his accountant, and it would actually be doing a favor for Spawn if he swatted Gravano pretty hard. Still interesting, like we talked about at the end of the Hunt 4, why if Gravano is still a threat, if you still want him swatted hard, the hardest way you can swat him is just kill him. And we've seen Spawn kill before, so I'm not sure why he doesn't just kill him. Yeah. But anyway,
I think you hit on. I think that's more of a significant constructive criticism than you and I have both made it. Yeah. I think it doesn't make sense that Spawn is letting these very high profile evil men live. And as the issues progress, that just keeps getting hammered home even more so. So it is, I think, it does sort of baffle me a little bit. But, again, nothing like a good villain. But the villains need to be elevated in order to justify how can a villain continue to survive when faced with an enemy like Spawn. We haven't really been told that yet, because Vito and Jason Wynn arguably should be dead by now. But anyways.
Yeah, I mean, you could make an argument that, Malbolgia and his denizens, Violator and whatever, they're more of a match for Spawn. They can't be killed. But yeah, you wonder. And I guess there could be an argument made that Spawn is trying to act like a man. He said that here, and that's what eventually, act human, feel like a man, feel human. That's what eventually changes his mind about not wanting to help out the homeless people that he spends most of his time around. Mm-hmm. But even when he was a man, he was a government assassin and killed people. So that even that argument doesn't really hold up.
Maybe an argument could be made that he's trying to, in some vain way, hold on to some vestige of his humanity, because he lost his body. He doesn't look human. He doesn't have human body parts. He's made up of psychoplasm, necroplasm, whatever it is. So maybe he's just choosing not to kill out of some vain attempt to maintain some tether to some goodness based upon the memory of his wife. Maybe, if I'm stretching it, I'm trying to help Todd McFarlane out here.
That's exactly what I'm saying. But what I go back to is, well, it didn't bother him when he was alive. But I guess then the counter argument there is, well, yeah, and look what happened to him when he died. And we'll talk more about that when we talk about tomorrow, when we talk about issue number 26. Yeah. Because that kind of plays in when somebody comes right out and says, well, why'd you pick Al Simmons? And Al asked that question, maybe like, what, why'd you pick me? And then somebody says, well, your capacity for evil, whatever. So maybe that's it. Maybe that,
Yeah.
he's trying to be good, quote unquote. But anyway, after he gives a file to this guy, and again, I find it strange. It seems like he's going to be a significant character, but we never get a name for him. So he jumps off, says, thanks, Spawn. I'll give you the lowdown when I'm through with him. Spawn says he'll be around. And he stops to think that for all the power this creature had, it seemed just as kind of tortured and, emotionally traumatized as Spawn himself seems. And he wonders, did he make a friend? Is this guy going to be an enemy at some point? Is it something in between? We don't know, and that's where it's left. So, yeah, I mean, I like I said at the beginning, I feel like I won't go so far as to say not a lot happened in this issue. I mean, basically, we're introduced to this new characters. It seems to be the most significant event, but it does feel like McFarlane did tailor the script for Silvestri, for his style of art, which, I mean, compared to a typical Spawn issue, I guarantee there's fewer panels.
Yeah.
And the panels themselves are bigger. And that's not to say that we don't get splash pages when McFarlane draws, but I think in general, you will get splash pages, but you'll get some pages where you have a lot of panels, and here you don't. 4 or 5 panels at the most, and a lot of the pages have even less than that. So, I mean, I'm a huge Silvestri fan, and I love the fact that we got to see Silvestri draw Spawn, and I particularly like the scene that Rocky referenced where Spawn's standing up when the homeless guy comes to tell him that somebody threatened their turf, and he stands up and you people are lazy, blah blah blah. It's just a great scene, and beautifully rendered by Silvestri, even with the shoelace face that Spawn has. So yeah, I mean, in terms of like chunk of story, it's a quicker read. This is definitely a quicker read, and in that way, even though it's not written by somebody other than McFarlane, just because of the style that Silvestri has, I think makes it a little bit of a quicker read. But yeah, I'm glad I'm glad there's a Silvestri drawn issue of Spawn. I'm glad it exists. So
a couple of things with the story itself that I thought were curious choices that I don't necessarily agree with, but did not substantially detract from the narrative itself, was just the choice. This new character, I appreciate that McFarlane wrote a story that maybe was trying to cater to Silvestri's artistic tendencies and interests and preferences, but not naming this sort of new villain, this person that was experimented upon, this former hitman of Vito Gravano, not giving him a name, I think was it didn't make any sense to me. I mean, I can't see Spawn, especially if Spawn is a former intelligence officer himself he was an undercover operative himself, or at least a military guy. I can't see him giving a secret file about Vito Gravano to some guy. He doesn't even bother getting his name, and the guy looks like a devil. I mean, and also artistically, the artistic rendition of this guy, this former hitman who's been experimented upon, not only do we not know his name, but why does he have horns out of his head? I know that he was experimented upon, but why does he actually look like he's actually a demon Spawn himself? He looks too much like a potential hell Spawn, and I think it throws confusion in the narrative. And I think I don't think that necessarily works well, unless, of course, maybe he is, like we know from Jason Wynn, or rather, we found out in previous issues. Yes, actually, we found out from Jason Wynn in a previous issue that Jason Wynn has made deals with certain agents of hell following the underground nuclear experimentation that took place under this Nevada, in the state of Nevada, that opened up hell. And so Jason Wynn and others, you can contract and you can make deals with various demon Spawn. And so I could maybe see if this hitman was linked to that, maybe that would explain his appearance. But if he's just, if you're going to experiment on a soldier, it just seems like, oh, how convenient. He looks exactly like a Hellspawn. I'm wondering if maybe Vito also has connections with Hell, with Agents of Hell, just like Jason Wynn does, that might explain maybe why Vito and Jason Wynn are a little bit more powerful than maybe they first appear, and could maybe add a little bit more verisimilitude to the story, because as you and I have both agreed upon, that it seems a little bit odd that Vito and Jason Wynn haven't been taken off the playing field so far. But so other than that, I like this. I would have really have liked to, and if for no other reason than when we review, I like to, it's so much easier to review a comic when we're actually given a name. I actually read this twice because I kept thinking I missed the name of this hitman, but no, there's no name given to this character. And that's a very odd thing to do. Spawn and this character they kind of fight. They have a long conversation. He gives him a secret information and he doesn't say, by the way, what's your name? I mean, it just seems really odd to me. I mean, but anyways, maybe it was still enjoyable. Silvestri's art was fantastic, and it, like I said, I can actually see this being almost a filler issue in a sense, because this doesn't appear to be an absolutely crucial character. This hitman that was experimented upon by Vito Gravano, he has this file, and he'll run off and go against Vito. I mean, if we never hear from him again, we never hear from him again. So I guess it's not a big deal. So I can almost see that this is a storyline that could have been shoehorned in theoretically anywhere within probably the larger narrative. But all in all, it was an enjoyable read. Whether or not we hear anything more about this character moving forward, I guess we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, he does get a name eventually. He does show back up. When I was trying to find out if I was right about that jump ahead, I did come across that. But yeah, I just find it very strange. Even if, I mean, maybe he hasn't been around in this sort of mutated form enough to be christened with a name yet, or to have given himself a name. Like if he's out for revenge, why not call yourself the Revenger or the Avenger or Vengeance or something like that? But he has, but at least like he had a human name, right? Like,
yeah,
I don't know, just really, really strange. So, but yeah, like I said, glad this issue exists, because I really dig on the Silvestri art. So, anyway, anything else to add, Rocky, before we sign off?
No, other than the fact that I guess this is a one-off, because the next issue is not drawn by Silvestri, if I
Yep.
recall. So this is just, I guess, a quick done in one by Silvestri, and then he sort of takes off. He sort of shows up quickly to show off his brilliance and then leaves.
Yep. Exactly. Back to drawing Cyberforce, I suppose.
Yeah.
So, okay, that's going to do it, everybody. We appreciate you joining us as always. Don't forget to head over to YouTube and subscribe to Rocky's channel so you don't miss any of the content. Just do a search for Comic Space Boom ! On YouTube. Ring that notification bell so you know when new content comes out. Like this video and be sure to subscribe. If you always check us out on YouTube and you don't listen to the other audio-only stuff from the Comic Source, we definitely encourage you to do that. So just head over to your favorite podcasting app or platform, Google, Stitcher, iTunes, whatever it is. Do a search for the Comic Source and subscribe there. So that's going to do it for today's episode. We'll be back tomorrow with more Spawn Daily and issue number 26, and we'll talk to you then.
See you later.